my favorite part with our clients, and this in the design part, I cause enough damage that my design people tell me sometimes to get out of the kitchen. But when we work with a client, we just launched one. It's called Wealth Dynasty, or it's in the launching process. So with their team, we sat down, we started elaborating. And if they came back just like everybody else round one with some name like the Financial Business Podcast or the Wealth Management Podcast or Life Insurance Podcast, and everybody has that. And you can picture it. It's going to be, please don't get me wrong, anyone here. It's going to be some older white guy and blazer, and maybe, it's going to be there, or with the, glasses, and it's just going to look so 1990s that you're going to be annoyed by it. But I was like, what can we do that's going to be different? So their podcast, I'm like, what are you trying to make with this podcast? And don't get me wrong, Kurt, he's an older white guy. But so what we went and searched, and we looked at their podcast, looked at people in their industry and tried to see what makes a difference. So we quickly saw the top ones when we searched in Apple that stood out in that world for keywords that they have, which is investment and wealth. And we saw some of the ones that looked good. So we're like, okay, how can we make sure ours beat that one? And we started looking at was from there, because the keyword is important, right? It's not you can call your podcast, whatever, but if you can go to ChatGPT and ask for help. So then one of the things they said was the word dynasty came up in our accounts and our collaboration, our brainstorming together with their team. And that wealth, from the wealth management was one that kept coming up. So we're like, what if we did like Wealth Dynasty, like your money lasting, like, the basketball teams have these, sports teams have these dynasties. Like, all right, let's go with that, this generational dynasty. So Wealth Dynasty wasn't taken. Nobody was using it, but wealth was popping up over and over again. And then when we went to I'll give you some of our secrets here. My design team goes to Pinterest and see top podcast covers. And we try to look at cross promotion from industries. What are some things like the fashion world, like for old money, which is a trend right now? So we took like an old money concept, that dark green and gold, and we used that in the podcast description. So Wealth Dynasty, now the background is this dark green. And then you have the dynasty is in cursive, and then wealth is lowercase for this irreverent type, more modern look. And then we do have the two guys there, but instead of like boring, we have them standing, one standing, sitting on cool different types of chairs. And they just look, one of them is in that blazer to show that, the experience. But the point is that this podcast cover started coming into life because we started to, one, look at what was out there. How can we be different? When we pop up in a directory with this title, with this name, is it going to be relevant to these other ones? 2, which one is going to look the best? 3, can we steal things from other industries? So we stole stuff from the fashion industry and used that to this boring podcast, industry. And then when it comes to the keywords, now that's where your critical component comes in. When you're writing your description for the podcast, you want to make it stand out, because you don't have to have, like, if my podcast is about, basketball, I don't need to have the basketball podcast. And don't ever use the word podcast in your podcast unless it's purposeful. So, because it's kind of like saying, I have a Toyota car. Like, Toyota is a car already. Don't need to waste your real estate that you have. The Toyota car, see that it's just Toyota because it's a physical car. We know that. It's a podcast. Don't need to put a podcast. So basketball, maybe it's going to be like, what are some of the terms that you can find that will pop out in the directory? So maybe like hoops or and one or whatever, but you have this name, and then now in your keyword description in the category, we're going to put it in sports, but then we're going to unload on the description stuff with basketball and the keywords there. Basketball game has changed in the era of LeBron and Steph Curry. Now we have the Indiana Pacers and blah, blah, blah. But now that first sentence alone is just rippled with keywords that would be associated with basketball. So basketball is there and top names people. So then now that drags you in, because if you look at Apple and Spotify, that first sentence or first line and underneath is what really pops up. You want that to be captivating, but you want the keywords in that paragraph. And when people search, that pops up. So even though my show is not basketball, it's and one, basketball is going to pop up when you search basketball, and that helps as well. So anyways, I digressed a little bit there, but hopefully that answers the question to it.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool. I like that. Yeah, I love the idea of that podcast as well. I'd definitely have a listen to that one. It'd be cool. Yeah, hoops or swish or something, or 3-pointer. Ideal.
3-pointer. There you go. I like that 3-pointer.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But yeah, you definitely.
One of our clients had one. Hoops Journey is one that we did for them.
Nice.
And that was Miami flavor. They did a small stint with their podcast, but anyways, but yeah.
Oh, cool. I was a Bulls fan, obviously in the 90s,
Yeah.
kind of, yeah. So, yeah, all good. And I also need to change my name now, actually. I think I've got podcasts in the end of it, so that's going to give me some more character,
Yeah.
which is cool. So I can put something else in there, which is good.
Well, our new podcast is launching. I'll tell you this part. Our new show is called, and purposeful. So this is the caveat. It's the first time I'm saying it out loud to the world, but it's called the podcast. And that was a straight up marketing ploy. If anyone ever heard of Camel, it's a site that for Apple, aside for Amazon, that allows for you to search and see Amazon deals over time. And I was like, who makes a website with 3 names like that? Camel, but it pops out. I saw an influencer on one of her social media, Instagram stories with it. But then with us, the podcast, there's no podcast name for a podcast out there. So we went with that. The podcast.
Cool. I was going to ask, with the video side of things, I know Spotify have got clips on there now, and obviously you can do the video podcast to your channel. You can have a podcast channel, but you can also have a podcast added to your channel almost as a feed. What are your thoughts on that, and what's the best way would you say is to utilize the video side of things?
So the name podcasting has evolved where so many people have a different view of podcasts now. Back then, it was like podcast was just the audio syndicated component, and that's the podcast. However, over time, it's evolved where people now look at podcasting as short form content to see it as podcasts. When people are producing YouTube videos to see it as podcasts, it's just like anything you put out there, a live stream, they're calling that a podcast. Like, so it's the name is varied now and much broader. So you want to be everywhere and anywhere at this point. So with my show in particular, we started off with the audio only back then. Then video came in and people kept asking for it. So we eventually created video, and we are just ramping up our game and changing some stuff on it because we were audio first podcast. But now we're changing that. My new show, the podcast is a video first podcast. And then the audio is there, but we're changing. We do in